which was in supposed to be last Wednesday. So this is a makeup class. In today's session, inshallah, we will cover methods. So suppose that you want to find the sum of integers from 1 to 10, and then from 20 to 30, then from 35 to 35 respectively. So if you want to find the sum, for example, for different range every time, in this way, if you want to use the loop, you already know the numbers that you will start with and you will end with. You need to define, in this case, a variable to hold the sum values, like here integer sum equals 0. Then you will start the loop with 4 for the first range from 1 until 10. Every time you will calculate the sum, the old value of sum with the new value of I. So every time will be sum equals sum plus I. Then you will print it for the first range. Then for the second range from 20 to 30, you will need also to start a loop with I from 20 until 30, and you will do the same. You will initialize the value of sum by 0. Then every time you will count the new sum with the old value of sum by adding the value of I. You will do the same for the third time with another loop from I35 until 45. Every time you will add sum. So basically, if you can see, this is not very professional if you want to program by repeating the same code, but every time you have actually the parameter is different. So first we have it 1, then we have it 20, then we have it 35, and the range is different every time. So in this case, this is actually the problem, that in our program, we will have to repeat the same code more than once. And every time we need to initialize sum with 0 so that we count the new sum. It would be better to have a method that execute the same code more than once just by call the method name. So here we could create a method with the name sum, and we have it parameters here, the start value of the loop, then the end value of the loop, which is actually 4 parameters. Then we define it as a method by giving it this structure. So we have here public static integer sum. This will be the value retained by this method. So this method will retain integer value, and this is the name of the method. It's called sum. So by calling sum method and passing the starting, the initial value and the end value of the loop as parameters to this method, we could execute the same code more than once just by passing the new values to this method by calling its name and passing the parameters. Then if we want to print the value of the sum, the last value of sum, we actually return it from this method to the main program to print it. So basically every time we will return a new sum based on the parameters from passed to this method. Okay. So in the main program, all we need is just by calling the method we just created, which is called sum. So inside the main program, every time we will call the method by the name sum and passing different parameters. So the first time we will pass 1 and 10. Second time we will pass 20 and 30. Third time we will pass it 35 to 45. And we just print. We just need to print the statement message that print on the screen. So you can see here that we don't need to repeat the same code, the for loop, more than once. And this is actually the benefit of using method. So in today's lesson, inshallah, the objective will be to define methods with formal parameters and to invoke methods with actual parameters, and also to define methods without return value or with return value. We will also discuss the overloading method. So what does it mean, overloading method, and how to pass argument by value. And we will determine also the scope of the variables, if we define them, where we can use them. And also we will understand the benefit of having methods in a program and why we could use overloading methods. So basically, what is methods? We could define methods that collection of a statement that are grouped together to perform an operation. So this is a method. Collection of statement because we place them inside the curly bracket here. This is the set of statement grouped together to perform an operation. So we need something out of this method that we might need to use it or execute the same code more than once in our main program. In this case, we separate this collection of a statement inside a method, and whenever we need to use them inside our main program, we will just invoke a method by calling the name and passing parameters. So this is how we define a method. We need the set of a statement, that need to be executed inside this method. And in the main program, all we need is just passing the parameters to it. So here, in the main program, we could define, for example, a variable that will hold the return value from that method, and we will call it maximum x and y. This parameters is called actual parameters or the argument. Okay, so here, and the method actually consists also of two parts. The first line of the method called method header, and the statement inside the curly bracket called the method body, the set of a statement here. The header itself actually consists of modifier like the word public, which is a reserved word, and static. And also, we should define the return value from this method. So here we have integer data type. This means the return value here, the variable here, supposed to be from integer data type. Whenever we need to define it inside the program, it's supposed to be integer data type as the return value from here. Then we're supposed to have the method name. So here the method name is called max. And then we have to place the bracket. Inside it, we should place the parameters list. So we have two parameters, both of them from integer data type, and this is called the formal parameters. We determine for the parameters the type and also names for these parameters, and this is called the formal parameters. This is all construct the header of the method. So basically we have some of the reserved word like public and static. We have the return value type, which is integer here. Then we're supposed to place the name of the method, max. Then we place the parameters, the formal parameters, which includes the data type and also the name of the variables from that type. Then we have actually the method body, which is the statements need to be executed inside that method. And we suppose also if it's returned some value, we're supposed to state the return statement there. And the variable there is supposed to be from the same data type of the return value type mentioned in the method signature. So basically, the method header is the first line. Method signature is actually consists from the method name and the parameters list. So whenever we need to call this method, we call it by name, which is max, and we need to pass two arguments from integer data type. So here x and y is supposed to be integer data type. And this is called, this line is called the method signature. Any questions so far? Okay. So back to the method.
Yes, teacher.
دكتورة
Yes.
بسؤال، عدد الحضور كأنه قليل اليوم.
Yes, I think so. We have around only 25. Maybe this is because of
Maybe we have quizzes today.
دكتور لأنه عندنا يعني محاضرة في نفس الوقت حقك وكويز كمان.
Okay, so don't worry about this session as it's already recorded, and I know it's a makeup class. So I wasn't expected that all of the students will be here today. But inshallah, I will share with you the video when I upload it, inshallah. Okay, so is there any question regarding this slide? Is it clear so far, method? Okay, so let's first. Okay, so let us start by discussing again what we have. So we have the method signature. Method signature actually is this part here. Consists of the name of the method and the parameters, the formal parameters, which includes the data type and the name of the variables. So we could say method signature is the combination of the method name and the parameters list. Okay, why we need to use this signature? In the main program, whenever you need to call this method, you have to call it by the name and pass argument from the same data type and also
To value.
The numbers. Yes, so it's supposed to be 2 parameters from integer data type. The formal parameters is actually the variables defined inside the signature. So the variables defined in the method header are known as formal parameters. So here is actually number 1 and number 2 is called the formal parameters. Whereas passing it or invoking the method from the main program, we pass the actual parameters. So this could be numbers like 2, 3, 5, 6. So whenever the numbers was passed in the main program, we will call these numbers actual parameters. So the actual parameters, when a method is invoked, you pass value to the parameters. So basically here we are expecting numbers. 5, 10, whatever it was the number, but it's supposed to be from which data type? What's supposed to be the data type of the numbers passed to this method?
Integer.
Integer, yes, very good. So you pass a value to the parameters. This value is referred to as actual parameter, or sometimes we call it argument. Then we have also the return value type. Method may return a value. If it needs to return a value, we need to mention the return statement inside the method. And the return value type is the data type of the value the method returns. So from the header of this method, it's mentioned that the return data value, the return value type is supposed to be integer. So inside method body, return variable here supposed to be also from the same data type, which is integer. If you can see here, the result variable is from integer data type inside also this method. So if the method does not return a value, if there is no value here that need to be returned from this method, we should place the keyword void to mention that this method will not return any value. And inside the main body of this method, we don't need to place return statement.
Return.
Yes, we don't need it if the data type here or return value type was void. Like for example, the main method is actually always we return void in the header of the main method as it doesn't return any value. Method declaration as a class declaration consists, as we said, from two parts. We have the header and we have the body. The header is the first line in that method, including the modifier, which is public static, the return type, which is here is void, method name, as here the method name is main, and also the parameters, which are placed inside the bracket. These are required, so you have always to place them in the header of a method. Then you have the curly bracket, which include the statement of the body of the method. Yes, very good. So basically, after writing the header of the method, you don't need to place semicolon. So after the first line, no semicolon here. The body delimited by left and right bracket. So you actually put this curly bracket and include all the statements that need to be executed in this method inside it. It could contain one or more statement that perform the method task. Let us see an example here. We have public class methods, and here we have a method, public static void draw stars. So here we can see the parameters of this method. There is no parameter here, and this is actually accepted. Sometimes you don't need to pass any value to this method. Inside it, we need to print every time from I equal 1 until I is less than or equal 8. We need to print a star. So basically, we will print a star 8 times in the same line. So this statement here, system out println, is actually will print on the output line. Yes, 8 stars on the same line. And this is the method what we'll do here. So basically, we have fixed value that need to be repeated every time. Every time I will start with 1 and end with 8. In our main program, we could call the method directly by the name, as it doesn't return any value. So we just call it by the name. Its name is draw stars. Then the execution of the program basically will start always from the main. So inside the main program, first we call this method without parameters. So it will go to the method here. The execution of the program will move in to the method. Then it will print 8 stars. So this is how our program will start. When this execution of the method finish, the executing of the program will return back to the line after calling the method. So the executing will come to this statement. It will print on the screen welcome word. So this will be printed on the screen. Then we will call again draw stars method. So the executing of the program will move him back to the method without parameters, which is here. And another line of stars, 8 stars, will be printed on the screen. So this will be printed again. Okay. Then when we finish, it will the executing of the program will back to the main program. And here, if we have a variable integer x equal draw star, this will give us compilation error. Do you know why? Why do you think this will give me compilation error? Integer x, we define a variable called x, and giving it the name of assigning it the value of or the method draw stars. Why do you think this will give me compilation error?
I think maybe because the same method is not integer, and you enter it an integer value, I think, صح? And I didn't see the above method.
Okay, so basically,
yeah, because there is no return value from the public static void draw stars.
Exactly. Basically here, if I said integer x equal draw stars, x is integer data type. Draw stars is actually method that does not return any value from inside it. So here is no return value. So if I said x will hold the value of a draw stars method, there is no value returned by this method, so this will give me compilation error. If I define a variable x here as integer, I'm supposed to place return integer value from inside this method. Okay, then if we define the if we call also the method called draw stars 3. Draw stars 3 here is actually passing parameters to the method. Here we have the header of this method without any parameters. Here we pass parameters. So the executing of the method, we could have more than one method with the same name. Here we have a draw stars, and beneath this main method we have another method with the same name. It's called draw stars, but the signature is different. Here we have another parameters. It's called integer numbers of stars. So we'll pass the number of stars as parameter to this method. So here we have a draw stars with 3 actual parameters. This will actually take the executing of the program to this method and pass 3 as parameters to this method, not to the above method. Then starting from I equal 1 until I is less than or equal the parameters passed by this method, which is actually 3, we will print a star. So here we will have to print on the print screen 3 stars. Then we will print a line. Then our main program will back to where we stopped, or where we called the method in the main program. Here we have for integer I equal 1, I is less than 4, I in increment every time by 1, we will call the method draw stars 10. So basically here we call draw stars 10 times, which is invoking this method here with parameters, integer data type. We will call it 4 times. Every time we will print on the screen 10 stars in different lines. Okay, so draw stars 10 will invoke the method draw stars with integer parameters, but a draw star without parameters will invoke the method draw stars without parameters, which will always print 8 stars on the line. Okay, so here basically, yes, you can have 2 methods with the same name, but my condition here, the parameters list supposed to be on different orders, or on different data types, or in different parameters numbers. So here we have no parameters. Here we have 1 parameter from integer data type. We have in declaring a method some reserved word like public and static. Public is means that this method is available to the public whenever another class defined in the program, it can be used, it can use this method. So if you define the method as public, it can be called from method of other class. A static method like main is special. Typically, you cannot call a method that belongs to another class until you create an object of that class. Like if we use next integer method of input a class. So basically, we create an object, then we can use the method defined inside that class. But a static method can be called without first creating an object. So if you define a method like a static, you could immediately call the method without the need to create an object first. A static method in the same class can call each other directly. So if you define a method with a static, you can call it inside any part of your class directly. Any other class that uses static method must fully qualify the method name with the class name. So you need to precede it with the name of the class, like for the power of 2 to power 3, we're supposed to call it with the class name, which is math. So So far, we will always define a method with the definer public and static. And you will see more about this in the future, inshallah. So the return type specifies the type of data the method return gives back to the calling method after performing its task. So here in the return type, we should specify which is the data type will be returned out of this method. If you place void as the data type, this means this method will return no value. The method name follows the return type. This is all will be in the header of the method. Method names begun with a lowercase. This is how you're supposed to start it. So always start the method name with lowercase. If the name of the method consists of more than one word, start the second word of the method name with capital letter, like next int draw star. So you can see here I is capital, S is capital. Empty parenthesis in the declaration of the header is accepted as you see in draw stars. And this indicates actually this method no need to pass any parameters. So this means this method does not require additional information to perform its task, like draw task with a blank parenthesis. A method can require one or more parameters. Each parameter must specify a type and identifier. So if you mention the parameters in the header of the method, you should always specify the type and variables, which is actually the identifier. A type is required for every parameters. You can't place just the name of the variable without determining the type. You should always specify the type inside the parameters list. So here we have method, the name is sum. It's take 2 parameters of integer data type, and this is correct. You will separate the parameters with normal comma. So here I'm expecting 2 values from integer data type to be passed to sum method. This definer will give me syntax error, as you can't actually start the or identify the method in this structure. What is missing here? Why this could give me syntax error? Integer a, comma b. What I need to include here? If I need to define this method, public static integer sum, integer a, comma b, this will give me syntax error. What do I need to place it here to correct it?
You need to add the integer int before the b.
Yes, you need to determine the data type of b variable here in the parameters list. Very good. So a method parameters are considered to be local variable, which is actually the parameters list here. This will be called as local variables. We will see what does it mean local variable of that method, and can be only used inside the body of that method. So if you pass any parameters here, or if you defined any parameters here, this means you cannot use them outside of this method. The only place that you can use them for this variable a and b is inside the body of the sum method. A method call supplies value for each of the method's parameters. The number of arguments in a method call. So whenever you need to call or invoke that method in the main program, you need to be careful with the number of arguments. It's supposed to be from the same number of parameters in the method header, and also from the same type. The argument type in the method call must be consistent with the type of the corresponding parameter in the method declaration. If one of the 2 conditions above is violated, this will give you compilation error. Also, for the return statement, it's supposed to return a value. Where it's supposed to return a value, it's supposed to be from the same data type mentioned in the header. When return statement return a value, the control of the program will actually lead the executing of the program to where the method was called. One of the common errors regard using methods in Java program when you use or when you declare a method outside the body of the class or inside the body of another method. So it's supposed to be inside the class declaration, not outside the class. Placing a semicolon after the right parenthesis. So this is also a common mistake. If you place a semicolon after the header of the method, redeclaring a parameters as local variable in the method's body. This is also another common mistakes. If you use the same parameter, if you define the parameters from the header inside the body of the method. Let us see here. We have method to class. Inside it, we have a method. Its name is sum with 2 parameters of integer data type A and B, and it's supposed to return integer data type. In our main program, we define a variable. In our main method body, we define a variable from integer data type with the name S, and S will actually hold the value of A and B. By the end, we will return the value of S to our main program. This is sum with A and B parameters. In our main program, we will call our method and passing the argument 1 and 4. So this will take the executing of the program or the control of the program to this method and pass 1 to A and 4 to B. So basically, return S here will be 1 plus 4, which is 5. But here in the main program, there is no variable to hold the return value from the method. This will not give you any error, but you basically lost the value returned from this method because you didn't actually store the value returned from this method inside any variable. This one will be correct. You define a variable integer in your main program. The name is total equals sum 3 and 5. So basically the return value by invoking
will be stored in the total.
Will be stored in the total, so we can use it in our main program. If I print system.out.println 3 plus 5 equal total, this will print 8, the value of total, which is returned from the method sum.
Sum method.
Yes. Then if we have system.out.println 1 plus 8 equal, so here what is the difference between total, which is in the first statement, and sum 1 and 8?
Sum is the same one of the total, but total we assign the number of sum, the total in the total variable. In the second statement, just only we print sum 1 plus we call the method and we print the total.
Yes, exactly. Basically what we did here, we called the method sum and passed argument to that method directly from the print statement here. So here we assigned the return value to a variable and we used that variable in our main program. In the second statement, we invoke that method directly in our main program by calling the method inside the print statement. So whenever here a return value is used, directly it will be printed on the screen. So this statement 1 plus 8 will be printed on the screen equal the return value of that method without using a variable. Here we define double y, we define a variable y from double data type, and we invoke the method sum with integers values 4 and 7. Do you think this will be correct? This statement here. So basically 4 and 7s are integers, which is as it's defined in the header of that method. But we assign the return value from that method, which is integer, to double variable, which is y. Can we do this? Is it correct?
Sorry, I didn't get you. If we defined it as a double, it is correct. If we didn't define it as a double, I think it will not work.
Okay, so basically, if you remember one of the sessions, we said if the variables defined as a higher data type, like double, it can accept lower data type, like
yes.
But the opposite
integer
is not
fault, and the opposite is not working. صح?
Yes.
So
basically here, it's fine. It will be accept the return value will be integer and will be stored inside double variable. And this will not give me any mistake. So this will be valid. But here is compilation error because I pass double values where it's supposed to be integers and store them. We need to store them inside double variable. So basically here, this will give me compilation error before because we already have some accept only integer data types. If you need to pass different data type to this method, you need to define actually another sum method that accepts double variables. Yes, double parameters. So here we need to define public static double sum with accepting two parameters, double A and double C. Return A plus C, which is actually from double data type. This then will be correct. If I said Y, which is a double variable, will hold the value of the method sum with parameters 3.2 and 6.1. If you pass two different parameters, one of them is integer and one of them is double, the executing or the method will be invoked here is actually
the double one.
The double one, yes.
The double method.
The double one. So if you could see here, this will return integer data type and this will return double data type. If the variable here in the main program is actually defined as double, this means and passing also the parameters from the double data type or different data type, one of them is integer, one of them is double, this will invoke actually the sum with double parameters, not with the integer parameters. Okay. Having the same name of the method but with different signature is called actually overloading. So when we can use method overloading, or what is it overloading? We could say a method of the same name as we have it here, sum. We have two methods, both of them, the name is sum.
Declared one for integer and one for double, so?
Yes, this is basically what is overloading. If you need to perform the same statement, the same idea of that method needs to be executed, but on different data type parameters. So every time the parameter is supposed to be from different data types. One supposed to be executing or adding the two values of integer. The other one supposed to be from double. So the return value here will be different. In this way, but both of them is actually doing some operation. So in this case, we need to define them as, we need to define the same method, but with different signature, and this is called overloading. Both of them will be inside the same class, but the main point here that these two methods need to have different signature. The method's name and the number, type, and the order of their parameters supposed to be different in the signature of this method. The compiler, when choosing which method to be executed, he will compare the data type in the parameters list and also the numbers of parameters. Overloaded method by their signature. So he will check, the compiler will check the signature of the methods, then pass the actual parameters to the correct method. Do we have more students? Around 33. Okay, so the compiler distinguish overload method by their signature, used to create several methods with the same name that perform the same or similar task. So you need to use the overloading methods whenever you need to perform similar task or the same idea out of these two methods. But as we said, you need to be careful with the types of parameters and also the numbers of them. Method calls cannot be distinguished by return type, so you can't distinguish which method to be executed from the return type. Overload method can have different return type if the methods have different parameters list. Overloaded method needs not have the same number of parameters, so you cannot place them with the same data types of parameters or the same number. Here we have, for example, draw stars with no parameters, and we have draw stars with one parameter. So this will be correct. Let us say this example, public class method 3. We have method, its name is positive, return Boolean data type, and take one argument, which is from integer data type. Every time we will check inside that method. If the passed argument is greater than 0, we will return true, otherwise it will return false. So here we have return statement, either true or false. And this also supposed to be from Boolean data type. We need here the else part because we need some value to be returned out of this method. If we don't place the else part here and the condition was false, so A was less than 0, this means if we don't
will have one value.
Yes, return will be only executing if the value of A was greater than 0. But if it was negative, this means, and we didn't place the else part here, this means
there is no return for the false
no
part.
return, yes, no return variable. And we already defined the signature that we need a Boolean return data type. We have also another method with different name called is positive2, return Boolean. Take one argument, integer x. So this will be accepted. Both of them is integer, but actually the name is different. This one is called is positive and this one is called is positive2. So in this case, it's fine to have the same return data type, the same number of parameters, the same parameters data type. Inside this method, we will say return x greater than 0. So whenever the x was greater than 0, it will return true. It will return false. In our main program, we will invoke these two methods. So we define number as integer 27. Then we could invoke the methods like this way. So if is positive to number, print on the screen is positive, else print the number is not positive.
Not positive or negative one.
Yes. So basically, we pass a fixed value, which is 27. As positive here is called, so this method will be invoked, not the other one. And we'll check the value here. So at the end in our program, it will print 27 as positive. How actually the method called or invoked? As you can see, we have two parts. We have the method part and we have the main program. Whenever we call or invoke the method in our main program, we need a variable in our main program that will hold the return value from that method. So whenever our method return a value from integer data type, the first things you need to do it in your program is to define a variable from the same data type. So here, this method is supposed to return integer. Define a variable in your main program with integer data type. So here, k will hold the return value from max method. Then we have here I and j. I and j is actually a variable in our main program. I is having the value 5, j is having the value 2. So I will be passed to parameters 1.
The max method.
To the max method, yes, and will pass to the first parameter in that method, which is number 1.
Number 1.
So 5 will be inside number 1. And the value of j will be passed to max method to the second parameter, which is actually 2. Inside this method, we actually define another parameter, another variable with the name result. This will be used only inside the method. So we cannot use it we cannot use it inside our main program as it's defined.
Yeah, out of the max method, صح?
Yes, it's actually defined inside the max method. So we can only use it inside the max method. If we want to use it in the main program, we will use it in this way from return result. So basically, we hold the output. We will compare here. This method will actually compare between the two parameters, which one is greater than the other. Then it will return the maximum number stored in result to the main program. So basically, we define a variable in this method with the name result. Then we will do our execution, what we need inside this method to be executed. We will compare between number 1 and number 2. If number 1 was greater than number 2, the result will hold the value of number 1. Otherwise, it will hold the value of number 2. By the end of this method, we will return the value stored inside result. So result will have only either number 1 or number 2. Whenever it was the value, whenever it was the value, it will be returned to the main program here. So by the end of this statement, the value of result will be stored inside k variable. Then the control of the statement will be from carry on from this statement here. So it will print on the screen the maximum between I and j, which is in the main program, is k, which is actually holding the return value from the method. So this is the trace of the method invocation. First, I will have the value 5. Then j will have the value 2. Then we define variable k, and we will invoke max equal I and j. So basically k now have no value, but we will invoke the method maximum and passing the argument I and j. So the executing will come to the method body here. It will pass the values of I and j to the argument number 1 and number 2. Then it will define a variable inside the method body, declare variable result in the method body. Then it will execute here if number 1 greater than number 2 is true. Then it will store the value of number 1 inside the result. So number 1 was 5, the value will be 5 stored inside the result variable. The else part here will not be executed as the result already have some value. Then the statement will be على طول directly to the return statement here in the method. So else part will be ignored. Return result, this will be executed in the method body. So 5 will return back to k and stored inside k. So here the k, return maximum I and j and assign the return value to k. Then the control of the program will carry on. It will print on the screen the maximum between 5 and 2 is 5. So this will be printed on the screen. This is how the call stack is actually done. So in the main program, the main method, we actually having I and j passing the value 5 and 2. And we define also the variable k, but the value of k will not be stored until the method is invoked. Inside the maximum method, when we call the maximum method, we actually passing I value to number 1 and j value to number 2, and result here will be the value of result here will be stored based on the condition. If number 1 was greater than number 2, then the result will have the value of number 1. Otherwise, it will have the value of number 2. So here, what is done here, we have now 5 stored inside result variable inside the maximum method. This will be returned to the main program and store the value in k. When all this operation is done, the stack will become empty. So this is actually the stack call. Okay. So here I is declared and initialized. So inside the main stack, the main method stack, here we will define the variable I and assign it the value 5. Then in the second statement, I equal to, inside the stack of the main method, we will have the variable j and assigning it the value 2, not 5 here. Then I5 and j is 2. Then here we define k. K so far doesn't have any value, but we will invoke maximum method. So we will have a space to the method max. So in here, press the value of I and j to number 1 and number 2 in the main method. Then also we need to declare the result. So here we have number 1 having 5, number 2 having 2, and the result have no value. Then the execution will be to the second statement. If number 1 greater than number 2, this is true. So result value will have the value of number 1, which is actually 5. So the value of number 1 here will be stored inside result variable. So here result will have 5, and then at the end we will return the result to the main program. So basically when I said result, return result and assign it to k. So the value of result will go back and stored inside k variable. Then we will execute the print statement on the main screen. Okay. And this was for the stack method. Let us see this example. If we have a method does not return any data type, so we will place the void keyword in the header of that method. Let's see this one. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, Doctor.
Okay. So let us see here. We have a class called test void method, and we have in the main method, we will print on the screen the grade is. Then we will call the method. It's called print grade. We pass double value, fixed value. So here from the execution of this statement, supposed to call the print grade with double parameters. So here it is. This method is actually void, so no return statement inside the body of this method. It will compare the parameters. If it is greater than 90, it will print A. Else, if it is greater than 80, it will print B. So basically, it will test the value and will print on the screen either A or B, C or D or F.
This
so
is action only.
Yes, only printing inside the method body, so no return value. In the main program, so here we have the value 78.5. So here it's supposed to print C on the screen. So there is no return value in the main program. Then the control statement after executing the method body will back to the main program. So in the main output screen, we will have the grade S, and also we will pass the parameters 59.5. So this is supposed to be F. So on the output screen, I'm expecting first C, then F, which is actually a statement inside the method. Let us see how, if we run it, what could we have? Compile and run. Your code, contain, fill code or click answer. So here, basically, this is what we have. There is no error. Answer. Here it is. So this is the output. The grade is C, then the grade is F, which is actually invoking the method from the main program, but the print message here is actually executed from inside the method body. The print statement here was executed from the method body. Test return grade method. Let us see this one. Here, inside the main program, we call method getGrade 78.5, and here it's supposed to return character data type. Character data type. So here, basically, inside the statement of this method, we will check the score every time, and we will write the return statement after the checking the condition or the value. So either return A, or either return B, or return C, or return D, or will return F. But here we have to determine the data type character, and only one letter will be returned out of this method: A, B, C, D, or F. In the main program, we will actually call the method directly and passing the parameters, and the print message will be inside the main program. Okay, so this is the difference between executing the same idea, one with without return value, one with return value. Okay. Here we have public static void in a println method have two parameters. One will be a string, one will be integer. What will happen inside this method? We will print a message. We will print the message, the numbers of n times. So every time we will print the same message, but the number of printing that message will be different based on the second parameters here, which is integer n. Suppose you invoke the method using welcome to Java and 5. The output here will be welcome to Java 5 times on the screen. If you invoke the method using computer science 15, this will also print on the screen computer science 15 times, as this will be every time invoked with different numbers. Can you invoke the method using 15, computer science? Can we invoke the method with this sentence? What do you think? Can we execute this method by calling it from the main program using this sentence?
So I think system.println.
What do you think? Look here. We have the parameters string and integer, and we pass 15 and computer science.
You pass the string. Yeah, you can call that because you cover. But there is a void. This is not returning any value. صح؟
Okay, it will not return any value, but look for the order of the parameter.
Yeah, acceptance the statement, because you already enter value integer, which is 15, and you enter string, which is computer science.
But the first parameters here, what is it?
No,
From...
لازم يكون أول شيء string بعدين integer. لازم يكون matching the same method.
Yes, very good. So basically, this will not be invoked because 15 is integer, and we have in the header of this string of this method, the first parameter is supposed to be string. So here, 15 will be passed to the first parameter here. 15 is integer, but we are expecting string as the first parameter. So this will give me error. The second parameter here is computer science, which is actually string, and we pass it to integer data type. So this also not correct. So this will not invoke. If we want to call it, we need to change the order of the parameters. Computer science is supposed to become first, بعدين 15. This program demonstrates passing value to the method an increment method. Let us see it. Let's see this method. Here we have in the main program x variable, integer data type, having the value 1. Before the call, so here we have x in the main program will have the value 1 and will be printed on the screen. Then we will call the method, which is called increment x. So the executing of the program will come here. Increment x return no value, it's void. And supposed to have the integer parameter, so 1 will be passed here. Inside the program, the value of passed parameter will be incremented by 1, so n plus plus
2
then will be printed on the screen inside the method s. So here n will be 2. When we finish from executing this, we will return back to the main program. In the main program, there is no return value, so x is still having the same value when it left the main program. So after the call, x is still 1. So let us see the execution of this method. Okay. Answer. So here, before the call, x was 1. Inside the method, we changed the value of x, which is passed value. Inside the method, we change the value of the parameters and increment it by 1, so it's become 2. Then we back to the main program. X does not change in the main program. It's still the same, still 1. Okay. Swap in your book to learn more about passing value to the methods. So I will leave this example, and here is the increment. So this is what we explain it here. Before the call, x was 1, and inside the method we changed the value as its passed parameter. So the value inside the method, as there is no return, this means the value will be only inside that method. After the call, x in the main program is still having its old value, which is actually was 1. This leads us to the scope of local variables. If you remember, we said at the beginning of this session that the variables defined inside method is only seen by inside that method. This means if you define a variable inside the curly bracket, you can only use that variable inside that blocks, inside that the curly bracket. Local variable defined inside the method. The scope of a variable is the part where we can use the value of that variable. Or we can say the part of the program where the variable can be referenced. The scope of a local variable starts from its declaration until the end of the block containing that variable. Local variable must be declared before it can be used. So you can't use any variable without declaring it first. You can declare a local variable with the same name multiple times, so you can use the same name of the variable, but it's supposed to be in different non-nesting block. But you cannot declare a local variable twice in nested block. So if you need to define a variable with the same name, you cannot do it inside nested blocks. It's supposed to be in different local blocks. A variable declared in the initial action part of a for loop header has its scope inside that loop. Outside that loop, you cannot use that variable. A variable declared inside the for loop, this means the scope of that variable is only inside the part from its declaration to the end of that block. So here, for example, the scope of I, which is defined inside the body of the for loop, it can be used from here until the end of the block. But if you define J here, it will be only from this part where we start defining and declaring J until the end. I, you can use it from the first statement where you declare it until the end of the block, but J, you can only use it from its declaration to the end of the block. So here, for example, inside this method, we define two variables, x and y. Then we declare I. So the scope of I will be only from here until the end of the for loop, which is here. So I, it can be seen only inside this part of our program. Then we define another I. So I is declared again, and this is correct as this will reference to another location in the memory. So I here reference to another location in the memory, and this is fine. So this is where I is seen here, and this is where this I is seen here. This will give me errors. Let us see why. We have x and y, and we define integer I inside the loop. Then we define another x inside the for loop, where we have already x defined in that method. So in the execution, it will get confused which x to be used. As you said, we can't define the same variable name with nested blocks, and this will actually consider as nested blocks. The for loop block is inside the block of the method, so you cannot define here x. You're supposed to define it with different name. X plus equals 0, x equal x plus I. So here is actually fine, but this statement is not executing. This will give me some errors. Declaration introduce names that can be used to refer to Java entities. The scope of a declaration is the portion of the program that can refer to the declared entity by its name. So entity is actually the variables defined in your program, and each variable has its own scope where you actually define that variable in that portion of your program. Basic scope rules. The scope of parameters declaration is the body of the method in which the declaration appears. So if you define parameters in a method, you can use that parameters only inside the body of that method. The scope of local variables declaration is from the point in which the declaration starts and to the end of that block. So you can start the local variables from its declaration to the end of the block. The scope of local variables declaration that appears in the initialization section of a for statement header is the body of the for statement and the other expression in the header. Method or field scope, where we can use a method or a field scope, is the entire body of the class. So you can use the method in any part of your class. Any block may contain variables declaration, so you could define any variables in any part of your program. If a local variable or parameters in a method has the same name as the field of the class, the field is hidden. until the block terminates execution, and this is called shadowing. We will see an example of shadowing here. This is basically if you have local variable inside a method or a parameter inside the method, and you already have the same name of the parameters, we will actually make some shadowing. So here, for example, we have a class, its name is a school. We define here a fixed variable, fixed constant. So here we have a private static integer x equal 1. This is field, the name is x. It can be used in any part of this class with this value. This is a private, so it can be used only inside a scope class and can be used in any part of the program. So whenever you define another variable with the same name, for example here x, inside this method, you actually hide the public x that is defined in the class. So here is actually, we define another x variable having the value 25. So local x in use local will have the value 25. Will not see the out value, will see only the inside block value. Plus x will change the value to the local. This will become 26. So local x and use local will become 26. Here, use field method will print on the screen field x in use field. Look here, we didn't define any x, so it will see the x defined in the main class. So here, field x in use field will be actually 1. Then x multiply equal 10. This will actually change the value to the public x defined in the class. So here x will change its value to 10. Now field x in use field is actually 10. So basically, this is what will happen in the main program. In the main program, if we try to print x, will this actually will call the value of x in the defined in the main program, which was 1 at the beginning. Then we defined another variable with the same name x inside the main program. So here, if you define another variable with the same name, local variable x shadow field x, which is actually in the main class. So local x in main will become 5. This will print 5 on the main screen. Then use local, this will invoke the method use local, which is here. So we define another x with the value 25. Local x and use local will become the value 25, which is actually defined x here. So this will print the third line here. Local x and use local is 25. Then we will change the value of x inside this method, use local, and increment it by 1. Then now local x and use local is 26. So this will be printed on the screen. Then the statement will carry on the main program. We will call use field method. In use field method, field x in use field is x. Basically, this will use the x defined in the class, the field x. So this will print x equal 1. So here we are. Field x in use field is 1. This is where we are. Then we will change the value by multiplying it to 10, and will print the value on the output screen. So now field x in use field is, this will print on screen 10. After executing this, the control of the statement back to use local here. For use local, it's the same. We have x equal 25. So we initialize the value back to 25. We will print on the screen 25, then 26. So this will be again 25, 26. Then use field method The last value of field X was 10. So 10 multiplied 10, this will be 100. So basically field in use field will become 10, which is the last value changed. Then multiplying the value of X by 10. So this will give me 100. Then the control will back to the main program here. At the end, local X in main is still the same. So it's defined in the main program here. X is equal 5. So this is not to change, as we basically have 3 different locations in memory with the same name X. So one for the local field, which was first start by 1, then changed to 10, then changed to 100. In the main program, we have X having the value 5. It doesn't change. In use local, we increment it, we initialize it by 25, then increment it by 1, so it's become a 26. And every time we use local, we actually resetting the value of X inside use local to 25. So here you can think of the method body as a black box. So any variable defined inside the method body, you will use it only inside that body. You're supposed to think about the body as a black box containing detailed implementation for the method. Why we could use a method? Why is it useful? Method actually useful whenever you need to reuse the same code more than once in different programs. If you want to hide the information, hide the implementation from the user by allowing him only to call, so the user will only invoke the method. He don't need to know what statements written there, what's the complexity of the code there. So basically only telling him about the signature of the header and about the signature of that method and what is the purpose out of that method. So what basically that method execute, what does it do? And basically by using method, we're reducing complexity. We could divide the work of the program on more than one programmer, and each one will work on a specific method. Then we could put it all together and check our program. So this basically reduced the complexity. By this, we finish meeting 5. Thank you very much. And as we have some times now, I prefer to start with the lab. So if that's fine with you, I can't remember last session. Did we already assign to you the homework, this one? Did I assign to you this homework? I can't remember because I didn't get any email from you. So I think I didn't give you as a homework. Did I give it to you? I just show you maybe the questions and I told you to work on it, or I didn't do.
Yeah, you told me work on it. You told us work on it in case for the second lab we will sit together to do it.
Okay, so basically, does any one of you work on that ideas?
Yes, I think I done it already, دكتورة, بس ما أرسلته أتوقع.
Yes, I didn't receive any email actually
Yes.
from.
أنا توقعت إنه I'm waiting to the lab عشان نحلها سوا, بس هذا الفكرة.
I think you was busy with your
TMAs.
Yes, so I didn't get any email out for this homework. So let us work on this. This will cover basically the ideas of using loops and also the idea of creating. No, there is no method actually here. So lab 3 and 4, we will cover only the idea of loops. Here we have to write a class with the name count of negatives. Basically, we will read from the user integer number. Then we will ask the user to enter this number. So basically, for example, the user enter 5. Then the user will require to enter 5 integers values, either positive or negative. We need to check the entered value. If it is less than 0, we're supposed to have a counter. It will count how many negative numbers entered by the user. We're supposed here to use while statement. This is a sample run. We will ask the user, please enter the number of integers. For example, the user enter 5. Then we will ask him using
the 5 values.
To enter the 5 values. Then we suppose also to have counting while the user entering the values.
But we cannot see from where you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so thank you for informing me. I will share.
I thought just you are thinking about it with the white paper.
Actually, opening. I'm opening the
yeah,
lab.
now okay, Doctor.
Okay.
Because I was sharing
طيب
only the browser window. Yes. Okay.
طيب.
So let's work on this idea. I will create a new project and I will call it negative, whatever, negative counting.
Counter.
Counter. Counting and finish. Then inside this project, let me close this one. Inside this project, I'll create a new file with main class, assigning it as a main class, and inside the project, negative counting, and next, I will call it also negative counter or whatever, and finish. Okay. يلا, tell me what's supposed I do here.
Yeah, نحط الانبوت حق السكانر UTL the
So
scanner.
here outside the class I suppose
import
Java dot
util
dot
scanner
with capital S.
yes.
Like this. Very good. So in the main program first we need the user to enter the numbers of value he want to check. So here system dot println. I will print.
Please enter the 5 value, the number of values that you needed.
Here we will take it from the same sentence, enter number of integers. From the sample run, I will take it the same and go back and I will just paste it here and 2 column. Then
scanner input before لازم أو تحت scanner input عشان نعرف الانبوت.
Yes, we need to define scanner input. We need to define input object for accepting the input from the user. So what should I write here? New scanner from system.in, like this, then semicolon. Very good. Now, after writing the message, so I will take this and I place it above. So find the scanner first, then I will print the message to the user. Then what I need here?
اللي هي الانتر الانبوت.
You need to define
integer طبعا الانبوت.
Integer variable. Let us say x equal
input that
integer.
Yes.
Very good. So basically, what is entered by the user, consider it as integer and store it inside x variable. Then,
but the system that out the println, enter the 5 values, enter the values of the number of integers.
So here I will use the same example
statement.
Run example. Enter the integers. So here. The integers, and I need to place the double quotation because this is string. Very good. So here enter the integers and I will place also 2 dots. Then
هنا حلقة while حلقة
while. So now we're supposed to read from the user.
Yeah, we need other input.
Need another variable, integer. Let us say y equal
input dot next int.
Input.
next
Int.
int. Okay.
Semicolon.
What do you think here? We need a while loop,
ترى في
right?
حلقة while أيوة أنا قبل
Yes.
كنت بقول لك في
So
while وبعدين
before
نقرأ
reading,
الفاليو.
we need to read the numbers of x. So here
until equal الx.
while
هنا لازم تقرأ النمبر equal to x.
numbers equal to x. So while, what's the boss I write here?
I think it's better when you show us the question again, doctor, so we can take a look screen again.
Here the user will enter number of integers. For example, say 5. We need a loop starting from 1 until 5. Every time we will ask the user to enter integer and reading and checking. Then we need a counter here. We need a counter here.
Yes, you defined up integer counter 0 or 1.
So here we could define another counter. Let us say
counter.
I, which is work as counter, equal 1.
1.
Very good. So while
I أصغر من أو تساوي الx.
الx, very good.
Go to the loop, yeah. This is the curly bracket. System without the println counted. And هنا لازم تعرفي negative value in case if the value is negative يحط الcounter plus بnegative value.
Where to define a negative counter? Outside the loop ولا inside the loop?
Define it negative out and use it inside.
So yes, very good. So here we need also integer
negative counter.
Say, negative counter. I will say, or I will say counter.
You do. Yes.
Counter. Give it initial value with 0.
0. Yeah.
Okay. So every time we need inside the loop to check the value.
So if the y is less than 0,
if y
counter plus
0. Very good. We need a block here.
Yes.
Let counter plus. Very good.
بعدين نطلع برا اللوب الوايل.
Here. Okay. Else طبعا الcounter will not change.
ما يحتاج.
Stay the same. Then here. What do I need?
احنا نبغى نطبع النيجاتيف نمبر صح؟ عددها صح؟
Okay.
System dot out println counter.
Look here. I is less than x. What we need here for I
value? I plus for you for sure.
Yes. Don't forget to change.
Because otherwise the loop is not working.
It will work, but it will become infinite.
Infinite because we
not
increase
I will become always 1.
Yes, صح.
So the condition I is less than or equal 5 will become always true. So we need to change the value of I inside the loop body, increment it by 1. So whenever it's reached the value of x, it will not execute the counter. So outside here, we need to print
out of while loop system.out.println counter.
Very good. So here system.out.println here counter equal
of negative values is what the counter is.
Statement from the run example, the number of negative integer. So here we will copy it and paste it. Plus counter system. So let us check our program. Everything is correct, do you think?
Yes.
Yes, seems fine, yeah.
Let us run it and see how it's work.
Now enter the number.
Enter number of integers. Say 5. Enter the integer 2.
-2.
Integer -4. So this is first number. -3. Second number. 2, another 2, positive, 1 positive. So the number of negative integer is 2, and this is correct. Well done. Well done. Any question regarding this idea? The rest of everything is clear? So we have around 31 students only today. We also have a time to do the another idea. We are required.
Find this lab, doctor.
Sorry.
This lab, this document, where we can find it.
You don't have it in the LMS?
No, we don't have.
It's not there. Okay, so I will send it to you. I will share it with you by email.
Okay.
So this is the another question. Write a Java class named draw triangle that draw the following right angles triangles. So the output
This is حلقة 4.
It doesn't mention here which loop we should use.
بس هذه غالبا نستخدم 4. احنا 2 4s مع بعض، واحدة تحسب الأسطر واحدة الأعمدة. ويلا.
Yes, it can be done in this way with 2 loops basically. Yes. Yeah. So this is the answers.
We need one branch.
We have 5 rows. So we define here a variable rows, which is holding the number of rows that we need to print it.
Which is 5.
Define another for loop starting from 1 until the number of rows. Inside it, we could define another loop, which is actually starting with J.
How many stars? Yes.
How many stars? So the first line, which is line number 1, which is actually I, we're supposed to print J times. So it will print on 1 stars. And the second line, where is I equal 2, J is supposed to be printed from 1 until the value of I, which is actually 2. So this will print
2 stars.
2 stars. We need to repeat this 5 times. So basically, at the end, we will have the same output as this one.
Triangle.
Okay, so I will not work through this on NetBeans, as I think it's very easy. Do you have any question? Do you have any question?
Yeah, me, Doctor, I have the question related the exam, the quiz. Sorry.
Yes. What about the quiz?
If you
yes,
yeah. Thank you, Doctor. First of all, thank you for all the help. I have the question for related the previous quiz.
Yes.
And you mentioned this the quiz only with meeting 4, but when I found the question, I get it all the question from me. For example, the action after ash iteration, he come like operation every question.